Well, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Boy, wasn't I surprised when I found out that Pontypool was a Valentine's Day movie. Not so much that it is about Valentine's Day, but it takes place on Valentine's Day. So, that was good enough for me. Been meaning to watch this one anyway, again. So, I mean, that worked out quite well. Spoiler alert, you know the drill. I'm going to be talking about the events of the movie and certain scenes and all that stuff, so if you don't want it spoiled, don't watch this video. And if you're expecting quality entertainment, don't watch this video. Yeah, so let's get right into it. It's basically the story of this shock jock type radio host. He does like a morning show, not like music radio, but talk radio kind of. He does like the news and stuff and reports on things, and he seems like that kind of a personality. He came from a bigger city, apparently. It doesn't say where exactly, maybe Toronto or something like that, but anyway, he's been relocated to the small hamlet of Pontypool in the Kawartha Lakes region of Ontario, which is a real place. I've been there actually, just last year. I drove through there. I was staying in Bobcaygeon in the Kawartha Lakes, and I realized that Pontypool was right there, so I was like, okay, well, I gotta drive through this town, so I did. Anyway, needless to say, yeah, we'll just get into it. So the movie starts off, we got Grant on the phone with his, Grant Mazzy is the radio host, sorry. Grant's on the phone with his agent. Basically, we find out that he's been fired from his previous place for being, like, a little bit too edgy, maybe. Or something along those lines. They don't really go into detail, but it seems like he was terminated for that. And like the best place that his agent could get him was in this small little hamlet of Pontypool. So that's where he goes. Doesn't really have a choice, but he's working, so that's something, right? You got to start again somewhere. If you fall to the bottom, you got to crawl your way up. So Pontypool it is. Anyway, he arrives at the place. He meets the woman who kind of deals with she's like the go-getter or the research girl or whatever you call her. Answers the phones, finds the stories, etc. Her name is Laurel Ann. We find out she actually just came back to Canada from a tour in Afghanistan. So this was in like the 2000s. So there was still the whole Afghanistan war situation going on at the time. So that she came back from that recently. She's kind of like a hometown hero or whatever. And then we meet Sydney, who's basically runs the radio station, which, because it's a very, very, very small town, it's being broadcast out of the local church's basement. Because, I mean, yeah, in a little hamlet, you're not going to have a dedicated radio station, but they do, because I guess the church is like, yeah, let's do it. So they have that. There's a little loudspeaker outside the church, too, that sort of broadcasts what's being played as well. It's kind of a cool idea for a small town like that. So anyway, he starts off his show, introduces himself, does his, they call it Mazziness, Grant Mazzy or whatever is his name, so sort of his take no prisoners type stuff. When he's going on about that, he, on the way to work, sorry, I forgot to mention, on the way to his shift, this is during the winter, by the way, so there's like blizzard and snow and everything. Some woman approaches his car on the passenger side and is banging on the window, and he's like, hello, and she's saying something and he can't quite make it up. He rolls down the window, and he's like, hello, and she's like, hello, and he's like, who are you? And she backs away into the darkness, and you hear her going, who are you? And she's just basically repeating everything that he says. He's like, okay, that was weird. She doesn't look like she's dressed for the weather either. So one of his first bits on his show is he sort of prompts the audience to call in, which is good. You know, you want to get engagement, right? If this is your first show or whatever. I assume it's his first show, but you want to get engagement from the audience. So he says, listen, I got a question for you guys. When exactly do you call 911? Like, when is the right time to do so? Like, at what point do you draw that line and say, okay, I need to call 911 instead of just, something else? Let me know what you think. Call us now and we'll discuss. So basically that's his opening. It's a good question. I mean, I don't even know what I would answer. But anyway, Then they cut to a scene of outside, and there's like a missing cat poster. It says Honey Honey the cat missing, very friendly and affectionate, blah 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 blah. And you hear someone like way off in the distance just shouting, "Honey, honey, honey." It's like, okay, that's creepy. It's very early morning, so it's still dark out and everything too, right? So that adds to the vibe of it. So anyway, back to the cat. There's a guy that calls in, and Laurel Ann answers, and she's like, "Hello, what would you like to say to Grant today?" And it's just gibberish. She can't really make out what he's saying, so she just like hangs up. It's okay. Clearly, it's like a button dial or something. But anyway, whatever it is, they get a line. They have a police radio to pick up like stories as they're happening. So they get one on the wire of a potential code. I think it's code. Is it 48 or something like that? Anyway, it's whatever the code is for a hostage situation. So they patch that into Grant right away. They're like, okay, here's some news. Go for it. And he goes for it. And basically it's being fed to him as it's being fed to them now that he's patched it through live. So he can see it live updating just as fast as they are. So he's kind of on the whim, and his mazziness, as they call it, takes over. And he's basically saying it comes through to say that it was a trailer carrying like an ice fishing hut or something, and then Sydney rolls her eyes, realizing, oh geez, okay, it's not a hostage situation, it's literally just like it's the end of ice fishing season, so everyone's probably drunk and it's just a misunderstanding. And then Grant takes that and rolls with it, and he's like, okay, so we have Ontario Provincial Police, possibly drunk, implying that everyone, including the cops, are drunk. So that's entertaining. He goes with the story on that. Basically, it winds out to be like nothing. It's just a bunch of drunk people or whatever. Then they cut to Ken, who's in their Sunshine Chopper. So apparently they have like a weather traffic guy who is in a helicopter flying around, even though it's like a tiny little hamlet. So I'm assuming that he reports for like probably out of like Peterborough or something, and maybe he does the whole Kawartha area or something. But anyway, we find out later what it actually is. But he says that basically there's a riot outside of the office of this Dr. Mendez, who's like the local physician or whatever. Apparently there was some rumors that he'd been writing prescriptions for people who didn't need them, etc. So that's what it's assumed. There's just like civil unrest. But it quickly escalates beyond that. So he says he's reporting on it live, saying, oh my god, there's like violence, and oh my god, the wall of the building just broke through, and like a wave of people has poured out of this building, meaning like there's so many people in it that it's just like liquid almost, which is, I'm trying to even visualize what that would look like. And the fact that it doesn't show it, so the majority of this takes place actually almost all of it takes place inside the radio station, so we're just learning about this stuff as it's happening, and we have to kind of give our own visuals, which, I mean, it's a lower budget movie, so it works for it, but it really works for it the way they do it. Anyway, so there's your visual, a wave of people, and apparently they're like being aggressive and violent towards one another and everything. And then he says that the military convoy is just pulled up and he's got to get out of there, and he says something along the lines like, oh, the road's blocked, I gotta back up, and he like gives away basically that he's not in a Sunshine Chopper apparently or something. So that's I mean, he doesn't directly say it, but it becomes obvious, and later Grant finds out, Sydney tells him essentially that he's not actually in a helicopter, he's basically sitting up on a hill looking down, and that's how he gets his views. And Grant's like, okay, that makes way more sense. Anyway, he cuts out. He's got to get out of there, I guess, get through the military blockade or whatever. That's fine. Then they're trying to get a hold of him again, obviously, because this is kind of a hot news story. Like, this doesn't happen every day in a small town, so. But that's when their guests for the show arrive, a band or a group of people called Lawrence and the Arabians or whatever, who are going to, like, do a little song. I guess they're doing, like, a play or something, or a performance in the area, or, like, a regional thing, so. And Grant's kind of like, you really think that the listeners want to want to hear this right now? I think they probably want to hear about the story. And Sydney's trying to explain, like, we don't have anything right now. We're going to try to get to something. Do your job, do the interview, let them sing their song, and as soon as we have something, we will patch it through to you. He's like, all right. So they do it, and they're singing their little song, and they finish, and at the end, the little girl, one of the performers is a little girl. She's like, I don't know how it ends. And they look at her like, what? It's done. I don't know how it ends. I don't know how. I don't. And her words start devolving into like partial words until all she could say is like pra. It's like, ugh. So that's creepy. Something's wrong with her. Anyway, they leave, and Sydney's like, okay, we've got an officer on the line. He's gonna tell you what happened. He's like, there's something wrong with that girl. And she's like, I'm sure it was a lovely performance. Like, did you hear them? And she's like, I'm sure it was great. I'm just patching you through. So obviously she didn't hear the weird word thing. They patch into this OPP. OPP is Ontario Provincial Police, by the way, if anyone doesn't know. So OPP comes on and he basically says that it's under control, sort of. He doesn't sound confident. He says that people were chanting something, and Grant's like, what were they chanting? He's like, just nonsense, gibberish. Like, some of them were shouting about Hitler, some were shouting about hurricanes. Like, it didn't make any sense. He's like, okay, that's very strange. Anyway, Sydney's like, okay, he obviously doesn't know anything more than we do, so they end the interview there. And then they get a call from the BBC. And Sydney's like, Grant, cut whatever you're doing. Oh yeah, Grant got a call, from a person who was answering the 911 question. He's like, yeah, maybe if they had like another number, like 912, or if it's a gray area. And she's like, Grant, we got to cut this now. We got the BBC. And he's like, what? Yeah, it's their time and our time, and we're putting them through. We got Nigel on the line for the BBC. Talk to him. And he's like, okay. Hi, Nigel. And Nigel's like, we have here Grant Massey. I'm not going to do the accent because I don't want to embarrass myself and you. But anyway, he's like, we got Grant Massey here from Pontypool, Ontario, Canada, who was the one who first broke the news of what's occurring in the small town. Mr. Massey, there have been reports of French-Canadian military blockades in the area. Is this anything to do with the separatist movement or the separatist terrorist groups that you had a history with in Canada? And he's like, no, this is nothing like that. There haven't been issues like that for a while, at least not major ones, and especially not in the area, whatever. And he's like, so can you tell me why exactly this is happening? What is spurring this violence? And Grant's just like, to be honest, we don't really know. We're just getting this live. Like, what do you want from me? And Nigel's like, okay, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it from the source itself. Nobody knows what's going on, but it's most likely to do with separatists and whatever. And Sydney just hangs up on him. She's like, that fucking guy. Excuse my language, but her words, not mine. Anyway, she's irritated that they're running with a story about separatism, even though that's like, well, in current times, no, that's a whole other story. We're gonna not get into politics here. If you're a Canadian, you probably know what's going on. But yeah, so that happens, and then right after, Ken calls back, and he's kind of panicking and breathing heavy, and they're like, Ken, are you okay? And this is on the air, by the way. He's like, yeah, I got away. I'm in a grain silo right now, and there's a little hole that I'm looking through. And he's explaining, he's like, I've seen things that I'm never gonna forget, things that will like ruin me for the rest of my life. And he's like, what did you see? And he's like, there's a van, and like people, they were a wave of people, a swarm of people were pulling two individuals out of this van and like carrying them to the ground in their teeth and devouring them and ripping them to shreds. And Grant's just like, and Sydney's like, dude, can we put this on the radio? Like, what the fuck's going on here? And he says, okay, there's someone coming. There's someone coming. And they're like, what's going on? And it's like, someone's coming. And then there's like a struggle, like it sounds like a fight or something, and they're trying to get him. Like, Ken, are you okay? Finally, Ken goes back. He's like, yeah, I'm good. There's a boy here with me. And he says, like, Mr. So-and-so's son. He's like a 19-year-old boy or whatever. Tall guy, like built for like football or something. I don't know. They try to imply that he's like a large individual, and he says that basically this guy has no hands and he's just staring at me. And they're like, what? He's like, he's saying something. Ken says he's saying something. I'm gonna try to get closer and see what he's saying. And Grant's like, Ken, I don't think you should do that. Anyway, that's when the call is interrupted by an emergency broadcast, which takes over all phone lines and radio lines and TV lines and everything. And it's broadcast in French. And being Ontario, they don't, speak fluently French. Luckily, Laurel Ann knows French, and she's going to go and translate it for them as it's live. So she's doing that. And the broadcast ends, and it cut Ken off completely. So they don't know if Ken is good. That's not great. Grant at this point is frustrated. He's like, are you guys playing a joke on me? Because, like, this is a little bit ridiculous. Like, I know I've got a not great history and stuff, and, like, did, like, my agent put you up to this? And he's, like, actually getting more and more mad. And they're like, Grant, no. Like, this is our station, too. Like, we're not going to make ourselves look asses. And he finally calms down. Then they cut to a segment of, they're showing just a bunch of like black and white short video clips of people standing there, and it's a sort of list of casualties that have happened. He's like, Mrs. Brown was sadly taken from us at age 73 by her husband, Henry, at age 78, who was then quickly taken by their son and daughter, so-and-so and so-and-so, their ages. They were in turn quickly taken by so-and-so and so-and-so. It's like a long chain of all these people that like killed and were killing other people, members of their family, members of the community. They're like, Bob McKenzie was briefly survived by his daughter, Madeline, until about noon today when she was sadly taken by Sarah, whatever. And it's like, holy crap, like this is, it's pretty intense, honestly. It's a good scene, and then the black and white video stills really kind of enhance the mood. So that's fun. Then unfortunately we get a little talk between Sydney and Laurel Ann as Grant's doing his thing. They're making tea or whatever, and Laurel Ann is like, I need to find Mr. Mazzy. And Sydney looks at her and says, what are you talking about? He's in the booth right now. He's doing the show. And she's like, oh, I know. Mr. Mazzy's missing. I miss Mr. Mazzy. I'm missing. And she stops and is like, kind of has a confused look on her face. And Sydney's like, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I just need to step away for a moment. And she steps off. And Sydney's like, okay, that's like, you having like an aneurysm or something? Anyway, her tea is going off, that whistle, and she turns the tea off, and you hear from the other side of the room a high-pitched ooh imitating the tea. And it's Laurel Ann doing this. And she's like, and Sydney is kind of like, what the hell's going on? Like, are you okay? Like, what? Yeah, so something's happening to her. At this point, the window opens and someone starts crawling through, like, feet first through the window, and they're like, hello. And it turns out that this is that Dr. Mendez, the same guy whose physician place was where the start of the riot was. And he's like, I've been like crawling on hands and knees, avoiding people's sight the whole time to get somewhere. I heard the broadcast, I knew someone was here and still good, so that's why I came here. He says, sorry, my throat is a little bit dry. Bear with me. Yeah, sorry. He hears Laurel Ann still making this noise, like not taking a breath. It's like a constant, like, ooh noise. And he's like, oh God, okay. So she, unfortunately, is turning. And Sydney's kind of like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, we have to move quickly. What's that? Is that a sound booth? And Sydney's like, yeah. It's like, okay, let's go in there. She'll be following our sound. So she doesn't know it yet, but she's actively hunting us. And Sydney's like, what? And they go into the booth, and Grant's in the middle of doing his thing, and they kind of bring him in there, and he kind of starts explaining that it's a viral thing. So It's not a biological virus, however. It's spread linguistically, which obviously makes no sense. But then he explains, instead of like being blood or airborne, this is a brand new type of entity, living thing that's using individual words to spread its disease, its infection. So it'll infect certain words, and once those words are repeated or heard or whatever, that's how it spreads to its new host. And it started out with, oh shit, I forgot to say. So the translation of the message before Laurel Ann turned into a tea kettle, essentially, she translated it and told them basically that for everyone's safety, they're requesting that everyone remain isolated, do not talk to immediate family members, and avoid speaking particularly terms of endearment. And then it goes on to say, do not translate this message, which she did. And they're just like, Anyway, flash forward back to the booth. At this point, Mendez is explaining this, and they're kind of like not sure, like, what? He sounds legit, he doesn't sound insane, but it doesn't make sense, right? Because, like, who... I don't know. Anyway, at this point, Laurel Ann starts smashing into the glass of the sound booth. She can't hear them, but she knows, I guess, in the vestigial parts of her brain that are still her, that are working with this virus, that they're in there. So instead of seeing by sight, they see by hearing, right? Which is an interesting twist on that. And Mendez is like, someone says, oh yeah, I think Grant says, can she read lips? And then Mendez stops. He's like, that's an interesting question. He's like, what? He's like, that's an interesting question. Can they read lips? I don't know. That's a very interesting question. Yeah, it's interesting, but this girl is like, yeah, throwing herself at the glass there. Anyway, at this point, Ken calls back, and he says, did you get the clip I sent you? And they're like, no, like, shit's been going down here, Ken. What did you send us? He's like, I sent it to you on your cell phone. And he looks, and sure enough, there's like an audio clip. And he says, play it. This is, keep in mind, this is like a full-grown teenage boy making these noises. And they play the clip, and it sounds like a newborn, like, infant, like, just fresh out of the womb, doing little crying, whimpering noises. And that is it was a cool little scene there. The noises were really creepy, and the fact that it's like a full-grown teenage boy essentially making these noises, and I don't know, it just adds again to the creepiness. I love this movie. I know I've said that already, but it's just the way they go about things. I'm not explaining it probably great, but the way they do it in the film, it's very effective. So anyway, he says that occasionally swarms of people will like walk past the grain silo, but he thinks for the most part he's safe. The boy is at this point no longer breathing, so if he was a threat, he's not now. And Grant says, okay, what were the people talking about? Because he's in his mind, he's like, okay, well, the officer said they were rambling about stuff, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, they were talking about U-boats, like German U-boats. And it's like, what? And Ken says, yeah, I think it's like a symbol of the condition. And then Grant's like, you mean a symptom? And he's like, yeah, a sample. Oh, this is. Grant's like, what's wrong, Ken? He's like, a simple sample. I can't get it out of my head. Sample, simple. And he's just repeating himself. And Mendez is like, okay, I'm sorry to say your friend is lost. He's now a victim of the virus. It's gotten to him. It's over. So they do a kind of a little sad farewell, like, and unfortunately we have to say goodbye now to our friend Ken in the Sunshine Chopper, etc. You know, they give him a little farewell speech. At this point, Laurel Ann is now bleeding. So she stops smashing the glass, and she like goes and grabs the phone lines, I guess, and like shorts them, and you see like sparks go. And she turns around, and there's like blood coming out of her mouth and her nose, and she just walks up to the glass, and again starts throwing herself into the glass more violently than before. And Mendez is kind of like, okay, this is really interesting. I've never seen this before. So she's never had a victim. So the way this virus works is apparently they will kill or suicide into another victim which then spreads the virus or something like that too. So it's I don't really understand it either, but he's kind of figuring it out in his like doctor mind, trying to think of it as the way a virus would work, just with linguistics instead of air or fluids or whatever. So he's very intrigued. He's like, granted, this is like a heartbreaking situation. Like, this is your friend, your coworker, but at the same time, like, I don't know what's going on. So this is new scientific territory. Anyway, Laurel Ann stops for a second after she bangs into the glass. There's like blood all over the glass from her face hitting it, and she just goes and like spews out blood and like chunks all onto the window, and then collapses dead. And so Mendez is like, okay, so that's what happens. They need to spread it or they'll die or something like that. And obviously Grant and Sydney are completely horrified. Like, well, Sydney especially, she probably worked with this girl for how long, right? And Grant stops. He's like, oh shit, I forgot to give her Valentine. And he's like, I guess when something like that happens, like the simplest thing is just like, oh my god. And then Sydney's like, I'm sorry, Grant, I thank you for the Valentine, I forgot to say thank you, but I appreciate it. And it's just like, kind of like they're all in shock at this point. Anyway, at this point, that's when a bunch of zombies end up breaking through well, not zombies, I guess they're zombies in the sense that 28 days later zombies are zombies, so they're like infected humans. I'm just gonna call them zombies for lack of a better term. Anyway, group of zombies break through, and they're now in the studio. So everyone is in the sound booth, but there are a bunch of them in the studio now, like going against the glass. And they start thinking, okay, can we send a message to lure them? Can we throw our voices? And Mendez is like, no. Like, no, what if we have a loudspeaker outside? And he's like, that could work. So they try to think of something simple that would be a potential new phrase or word or something that the virus would want to cling to and use. Something like simple and catchy. They come up with a few things, and then he's like, Sydney Breyer is alive, and they stop and they're like, that's actually not a bad idea, because if anyone's not infected and they hear that and they're from the town, they know Sydney. So if they know she's alive, and also it's a simple enough thing that the virus might catch on to it, I don't know, that's the plan. So they do that, and Sydney loops it, and it's playing on a loudspeaker outside of the church, and sure enough, all the zombos go upstairs and go outside. At this point, Mendez is rambling on in various other languages, which obviously, like, Sydney and Grant aren't familiar with, and some of them are, I guess, like, not even close to anything here in North America. So starts out with Spanish, and then I think I heard some German in there, and then some other stuff, and they're kind of like, oh shit, is he turning now too? He's talking like crazy, and Mendez looks, he's like, it's only the English language. It's only English. He like figures that out, and they're like, okay. They still think he's kind of like potentially not doing well. So they leave. All the zombos are gone, so I mean, it's safe. They head upstairs, and they're walking, and Sydney turns to Grant to say something, and that's when they see the little girl that from Lawrence and the Arabians sitting in the chair and slowly getting up, and right behind Grant. And Sydney's like, run, Grant, run. And then the little girl is just like, run, Grant, run, and like jumps, lashes out at Sydney and knocks her to the ground. Grant pulls her off, and it's a little kid, whether you're infected or not, so obviously they overpower her and they dispatch her. And then they start having a conversation of, okay, well, who's gonna kill the doctor? And Grant's like, well, you killed the kid, so you should kill the doctor. And she's like, what? I didn't kill the kid. You killed the kid. He's like, okay, I killed the kid. Fair enough. I killed the kid, so you should kill the doctor. She's like, I'm not killing the doctor. And Grant's like, all right, okay. If the doctor attacks us, I will kill him. Oh shit, I forgot to say, they have decided at this point to speak French because they catch on to the whole not English thing. So tuer le docteur instead of like killing the doctor. So whatever. They've been speaking in French up to and then right after the run Grant run part, because she screams that in English. Anyway, they do that, and then they go into another little room, and they're kind of hiding out waiting, passing the time. There's gunfire sounds outside, so obviously the military, the battalion or whatever, had moved on to that area, and they're cleaning out whatever's out there. Shit, I missed another part. So they start announcing, before they went back upstairs, they announced on the radio, they're like, we got to try to tell people that it's... Shit, no, that is after. God damn it, I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, so forget what I just said. They're back in the room, they're figuring it out. Sydney is drinking. She's stressed. I guess she figures it's over. She's having a swig here and there, and starts talking, and Grant's like, shh, shh, shh. He's listening to like the clip that Nigel was saying to him, trying to see if there's any like hidden information that he should find out, and there isn't, unfortunately. And Sydney starts turning, unfortunately. The infected word for her is the word kill, because they've been saying kill because that's what's been going on. She's like, kill. And she's kind of freaking out, and Grant is like, okay, how do we it's when you understand the word that the virus takes hold. So how do you not understand a word? And then he realizes, when I was a kid, I used to say words over and over and over again until they like lose all meaning. You know what I mean? Like, I've done that too. I'm sure most people have done that. Like, you say the word like squid enough, say squid like 40 times in a row, and then you're like, what the hell's a squid, right? I mean, you know what it is, but that's his plan of thinking. So he's thinking, okay, this is a good plan. And then he's going around and he's like, he's trying to get to Sydney. He's like, no, you have to not understand the word kiss. So kiss is not kiss. Kill is not kill. Kill is beautiful. Kill is happy. Kill is wonderful. Kill is everything. And then that's what he says, kill is kiss. Kill is kiss. And I guess the way it works is if the words are similar enough but they don't have anything to do with each other, that's how it kind of combats it. And he actually ends up curing her by getting her to lose the meaning of what kill is temporarily by repeating kill is kiss, kill is kiss, kill is kiss. And he's like, I just cured you. And she's like, yeah. And she's like, kill me. And so they make out, because whatever. And then they're like, okay, we have to get this cure out there. So they go back down to the booth, and they go back on the air, and they start telling everyone, like, listen, we've got a potential cure here. We figured it out. You have to not understand the words. So he's like, Sydney, do you have a list of all the words that are, infected? She's like, I don't have a list, but like terms of endearment. So like sweetie, honey. And he's like, okay, so this isn't this is this. And he's thinking, no, fuck, that's the opposite. It can't be the opposite. It has to be similar enough sounding, but it can't be the thing. So he's trying to like quickly think of things of words that he knows were infected, and essentially he does his best. At that point, it's kind of the end. You hear a French countdown from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then black screen. So I'm assuming that they dropped a bomb, or they bombed the town to curb the disease before it gets out there. You don't know what really happened to them after that. I mean, they're in a basement, so maybe they lived. I don't know. I would really like a sequel. Apparently, they've been working on one for the last couple of years. And then when the credits play, they have sort of a clip of, just standard news of, like, the Kawartha region of the town of Pontypool and the Kawartha Lakes has been quarantined by the military, whatever, due to a viral outbreak or something, and they're kind of playing it off like, it's just a thing. Not like some revolutionary new biological entity or whatever. And then after the credits, there's a weird scene where it's the same actors, but they're playing different characters. And apparently that was a prequel to another movie that the directors did after. I think it was called Dreamland or Dreamworld or something. I still haven't seen that yet, but yeah, when I first saw the movie, that made no sense to me. I'm like, okay, this is like a really artsy way to end the movie. I thought maybe it was referencing like a work of literature that I didn't know about before then, but no, it was like a prequel to the next movie that there's going to be like a spiritual successor, sort of like how Perfect Dark was a spiritual successor to GoldenEye 64 video games. But yeah, that was Pontypool, and I really, really, really hope they do a sequel, because the concept is interesting enough to have like a viral zombie outbreak that's not spread by like biting or the air or anything of like standard typical disease, but being spread by like language and individual words becoming infected. That's really an interesting concept. It sounds really bizarre, but the way they did it in this movie is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, I can't give this movie enough praise for a small budget, for like a single. Everything happens inside the radio station in the church basement for the most part, except for like the intro scene with him driving to work, and then like the black and white videos of all the people who took each other's lives and stuff. But that being said, the small amount of gore they had was good. The acting was great. So Stephen McHattie, who played Grant Mazzy, he has a voice for radio too. Like, I would listen to this guy's show absolutely. If Grant Mazzy was a real character, he's intriguing. I like his mazziness. Yeah, it's like that was his true calling. Well, not his true calling, because he's an actor and he's good at that too. So whatever, he has a fallback option if ever the acting doesn't work for some reason. Yeah, I don't know the other two actresses' names, or the gentleman who played Mendez, but they were all solid. I'm going to give this one a 9.3 because it is great. I really, really like this movie. You know what? No, I'm going to give it a 9.3 is good. I'll do 9.3. Yeah, that's it. You should absolutely watch it. I don't know what it's streaming on right now. I have the DVD, so that's how I watched it. I'm guessing it's probably on like Shudder or Prime. Those two seem to be the most good for the kind of movies I've been watching lately. So check it out. Pontypool. Happy Valentine's Day. Avoid Terms of Endearment today on the day of Terms of Endearment. All right, take her easy. Bye.